Another 40-degree day. The girls are living it up today. I usually have this going, which I run off the DC power to the van, which is solar powered. But today we also have the aircon. Yeah, we've got 26 degrees in here at the moment. It started off at about 36, so we've dropped 10 degrees. So it's comfortable enough for the girls now to stretch out and go to sleep. But that is facilitated by the fact that we now have AC power to the van as well as DC power. I'll go and show you the system. Did a bit of mowing this morning while it was still cool enough. All this front area. I've got to do the back area behind us too. That'll be tomorrow, I guess. Burnt the rubbish too this morning. This is our water tank system. So the van's got 2 belly tanks. And I feed into those from the drop tank through the hose there. Comes up through 1.25 poly into the hose fitting, and I feed it from the drop tank there. Or I should say gravity feed tank. That's our storage tank, that's full as well. But I still have to rig up a 12-volt pump to pump out of there into there. I've got a 12-volt pump that I want to use for the job. But I need to get the line for it. It's got a really thin inlet line because of the way the pump's designed. Yeah, this girl's full, which is a blessing. So, we're not using generator. That's been our AC power source since we got up here, till I got the solar connected. So that's our solar line. The panels are up there on the roof of the container. I've got 2 commercial grade panels. I said, if you can get those, I got those second hand, cheap for about 50 bucks each. 320 watt commercial grade solar panels. Because they were part of a array that had been hail damaged. So that's them. I got to obviously make a sheath to cover all of that, all the line work and that. But basically that's them. I haven't nailed them down permanently yet because I want to see what the best angle's going to be. At the moment I'm getting plenty of power with them just laying flat. I noticed the 2 on the roof of the van that run the DC power system of the van. They just laid them flat too, so I tried that up here and I'm getting plenty. I had them standing up on the ground while they were on the test bench. I had them standing up at an angle and was able to get good power production out of them there. But even just laying them flat like this on top of the container, because of where the sun is and the way it comes over, basically like that. Yeah, that's probably not helpful because you've got nothing to relate it to, but the way it comes over, they get power from, it gets power from about 6 o'clock in the morning. It starts generating ampage, which is primarily what I need more of. It generates heaps of voltage, those 2 panels. I'm always generating up around, well, the lowest voltage it generates is like 17 or 18 volts. Its general voltage range is up around 30 volts as a steady input. Only 14.2 of those volts is going back into the battery, so it's getting heaps of voltage. The rest of it's being regulated by the solar controller, which I'm going to show you now. That's our solar controller. That's our inverter, 4,000 watt inverter, just a cheap one, man. And not really cheap, but you know, certainly nowhere near top of the tree. That's probably the weakest component in the whole system. And that's our 200 amp hour LiFePO4 battery. And that's the system. So this is the other system here. This is the DC system. This has been hooked up. I upgraded that. That's a 60 amp solar controller. That's a 60 amp solar controller as well. I think that one was cheaper in the end. When I bought that, I got that for a good price. That's been installed for a while now. So I got that for a good price. And I got the battery first. Both of these are first generation LiFePO 4 batteries. So there's another LiFePO 4 battery in there, 200 amp hour, 200 amp current, constant current draw too. This one's not as good. It's only got 100 amp constant current draw with a 200 amp peak. But that one's got a constant 200 amp current draw. So it's got more depth, basically, is what that's telling you. The battery's got more depth. And you can tell, because it sucks the depth out of this quite quickly. That one's been fairly durable and robust even during cloudy days. It's kept the DC, or weaker cloudy days and rain, it's kept the DC system running. So that's a blessing, just with those two panels on top, which are not going to be as potent as those two commercial panels on top of the roof of the container that feeds this system. But the thing that I found is that the battery acts as a conduit. When it's full, or when it's fully charged, it basically acts as a conduit. And if you're putting in more ampage, the thing that kills it is the current draw, right? Ampage, not voltage, not so much the voltage draw, but the current draw. So if you've got let's get you out of the way. If you've got more current coming into the battery than what it's putting out, that will offset the current draw deficit. So that while ever you've got more current coming into the battery, and that's how I set those panels up. That's why I use Y connectors, because I set them up in parallel, which actually increases the current of the PV, that increases the PV photovoltaic current that comes down into the solar controller and gets fed, regulated and fed into the battery from that. Increases the current when you put them in parallel, but keeps the voltage the same. If you put them in series, keeps the current the same, but increases the voltage. In my situation, because of the battery and the way the system is designed to work, or what I purposed for it, I needed more ampage. I realised from operating it on the test bench for about 2 weeks, under a whole series of different configurations, etc., and usage, I realised that the primary need for that battery was more current. Fire pit. So that's what happens to the rubbish. You can see our dunny thrown down the back there for the shit pit. I've got to build a shelter over that now. That's been our friend. Sanitation, man. One of the fundamental things that you have to set up in order to survive properly. So you've got fire, you've got water, you've got energy, you've got shelter, you've got sanitation. And they're all the things that I've been working on basically since we got up here. Shelter is still coming. I mean, we've got the van, but there has to be a shelter over the van. That's what all these holes are for. I've got most of the posts cut down in the paddock over here. Well, actually down through the gully area over that way. I've got most of the posts cut. Actually, I think I've got all of the posts cut now, and some of the beams that I need to build it, just out of the timber that's lying on the ground. Fortunately, there's a lot of blue gum and stuff here, and you get a lot of good straight trunks, and some of the limbs, you get good straight limbs as well for a fair length. So they're being cut down into posts to stand in these holes to create a structure that will create a roof over the van and go all the way back to the edge of the container, basically. So this whole area from the front here, so there'll be an area out the front going all the way back to the edge of the container, will all be clad. Initially, I'm just going to put up these posts So the 3 lines there, and put up the shelter over the van straight away, and then I'll work on getting the rest of it done from here. So, I know I'm too slow, that's the problem. I'm too slow. But I just chip away as I can. And at the moment I'm being held up by the need for machinery. The guy who owns the place promised me that I could use the machinery. But most of his machinery is in need of repair and maintenance. And I am loath to use it any of it at the moment because of that. I mean, I can't use the tractor at all because it's blown a hydraulic line, etc. So anyway, we'll see what we can organise with that. The sooner I can get those posts in, the sooner I can start putting the beams up and actually getting it to the point where I can put the tin on it. I've been collecting tin as well, just going to use recycled iron, probably silicon up, as much as I hate to say it, silicon up any holes. But there's some long runs of iron and there's more up there that I can get, and there's more over in that mess there. There's a little billabong there where a guy actually a hippie dude built a camp, and was camped right on the edge of the billabong that's over in the middle of that that thicket of trees and stuff there. But he used his material on one of his beams was too thin, and the thing actually snapped in the middle, and his roof caved in on him in the middle. Fortunately the front held, so it didn't completely cave in on him, but the whole back of it caved in, and at that point I think he just decided he was going to move out. There, collecting stone too. So this is a utility job, part of my work for the property as well, because all the stone that I pick up and build with is picked up out of the paddocks, but especially along the boundary lines. I've been working my way from the bottom of the front paddock up through the bottom paddocks up to this top paddock. I've been working my way up through there, clearing all the stones out like a 3/a deck width sort of thing from the boundary line, because that's how we cut our fire breaks along the boundaries, 3/a widths wide, which is helpful. I mean, if all the neighbours do it, this guy has mowed at least once. He's done a 2/a deck width along there, which is a blessing, but that needs doing again. I came through and mowed all this when we first came up here, before we first came up here, and it had all turned to brown scrub, stubble and dust. But we've had a couple of weeks of good rain, and as you can see, and plenty of sunshine. And as you can see, the grass has spent no time in recovering. Yeah, 3 days, man, and the green started to poke through after the thing was just dust. Just about. So that's a blessing. Means I have to mow it now though. As I said, I was out this morning doing that. Mowed that front section, that looks good. I'll get into this area tomorrow morning or maybe this evening. But yeah, that's where we're up to. This is our pad and our encampment at the moment. The shed's going to go over here, basically. But I need to get this structure going, and I need to make sure everything is working here. I'll get that pump so we can pump out of our 5,000 litre storage tank. When the roof goes on, we'll direct our rainwater into that tank as well, and pump up into the gravity feed tank, which then allows us to fill the van tanks. I don't have a better system than that. I tried to hook up a better system than that, but I need a pressure pump if I'm going to feed into the main inlet line for the van. Unfortunately, that line has to be under pressure. Volume won't do it. Like, I run an 1.25 inch line all the way from the tank, from the gravity feed tank. I run an 1.25 inch line. You can see it there where I've disconnected it. That was my experiment. I tried all the way into there, but it doesn't have enough pressure. There's not enough head of pressure. If that was probably 3 times as high as it is now, then you may get enough head of pressure if you build a tower and put it right up near that branch or something. Then you would get enough head of pressure to feed into there, even with a small volume of water. But the only other way to do it is to put a pressure pump on this side and feed in from the pressure pump into there. But we already have a pressure pump inside the van, which runs as a 12-volt pressure pump. It's got a Santoprene, it's a Santoprene diaphragm type pressure pump. It should last a little while yet. It doesn't have any direct moving parts, there's no impeller to get clogged up and all that sort of stuff. I may have to pull it apart at some point because unfortunately I still, the sand filter that I was given when I finally got it all connected up had a couple of leaks, and one of the leaks was along the seam line, which is a real bummer. So I couldn't use it. So I got to just install some normal filters there to filter that water before it goes into the van. I don't use that for drinking water at the moment because it's unfiltered, and it comes from the dam primarily, one of the dams. Yeah. So there's no point in me, I could, and getting a 12-volt pressure pump too. I'd prefer to run it off 12 volt because then even if the inverter dies, we can still run the pumps and stuff. And the biggest 12 volt pressure pumps that I can find are like the one that's in the van anyway. At least on eBay and that sort of thing. So that's just one of my chores. So I leave the system as it is for the moment. That's just one of my chores, is to fill the belly tanks up. So I've got 200 litres and I feed in, like I said, I fill the belly tanks up whenever it's needed so they don't run dry. Yeah, it's a shame I couldn't get that to work, even if that had trickled into the belly tanks from there, but it's designed to have pressure behind it going into there. So it was coming out. I got it to actually feed up into the front, into the sink tank tap, which is just behind this window. But you can see the height differential, right? So every time you come up closer to where your gravity feed is, every time you come up from ground height, you're actually losing more and more pressure. And that's going into like a half-inch line, man, from 1.25 inches down into half-inch. So it has to be under pressure. And the other thing I found was that it wouldn't trickle back into the belly tanks either. You could get it to trickle out of the tap, but it didn't have enough pressure to force itself. Or maybe there's an anti-return valve or something, so that it doesn't trickle back, fill up the belly tanks and overflow them, I guess. There would be a way around that. I could probably bypass that whole system and just have maybe just run it straight to the pump. I may try that. From the gravity feed, just run it straight into the pump. Yep. So there you go. That's our firefighting setup. And yeah, the pressure, two things about using the pressure washer for that sort of thing. You don't need a lot of volume of water coming in. So I just plug it into the van. I've got 200 litres behind me. We had a fire about 400 metres that way, heading this way the other week. So I had all this area set up and ready to go for that. And I had the fire truck that's on the property here. I had that ready. I went out to the boundary a few times and watched it, but they ended up getting it under control. They ended up with about, I don't know, 3 or 4 RFS units in there, and strikers or whatever they call them, and they ended up getting it under control. It didn't get much closer than about 300 or 400 metres from our boundary. We had another much bigger fire that they were using 4 choppers to water bomb just over that ridge line there, so about 1 kilometre away. I went and watched the front of it a couple of times as it was coming south toward us, but The other thing too was the wind helped us. The wind ended up blowing it back on itself, and then it ended up blowing it sideways up that valley. But if it had kept going up that valley, it would have joined up with the fire that was down at Rocky River, because it was heading that direction then, and it would have, if that had happened, they would have had a major, would have burned all through the Gerard State Forest, man, would have burnt that right out, would have burnt Richard right out. So they were intensely water bombing it just over that ridge line, that first main ridge line that you can see, not the hills in the background, but just that first ridge line there. It was just on the other side of that, basically. But they had 4 choppers that were flying in from the river over there and just water bombing it all along there and then the Lord sent some rain, yes, and quenched it, except for one tenacious part that was just over there. They had to water bomb that the next day to put it out, finally put it out. But the rest of it, the rest of the front, there were about 3 or 4 hot spots along the front as it was coming. Yeah, they were struggling with that, even with 4 choppers. Until the Lord sent the rain and he quenched the fire for us again. Yeah, that's a blessing. But we are prepared, and we do have a defendable area. I asked the local builder and machinery operator who lives here, Alex, who's been in the area and attended quite a few fires. I've attended a couple of fires with him actually since I've been here too, on other people's properties and stuff. We're there before the RFS, mostly. But anyway, he said this is a defendable area. And if you keep the grass down, even if it turns brown, if you keep it down, it's quite easy just to put out a grass fire that's down around your toes, mate. It's not a real drama. So we actually do have a defendable area here. These trees, all these black sallies, have to come out. I've just been slowly clearing them, as you can see. It's a couple of piles of what I've already taken out of the way. I'll just work my way back slowly toward the boundary. Leave the iron barks and stuff there, of course. But just get rid of the black sallies, because they're a real problem, man. He's got them everywhere around his borders, especially because the people on the properties around him don't do anything to control them. So yeah, you can see where they are encroaching back over his borders, where he's cleared them and they're coming back and that sort of thing. The local beekeeper has got his bees there. I'll go over, I'll probably get stung again. Man, yeah, when they're on the outside of the box like that, it means they're usually pretty vigilant too. I've noticed that. So you can see them all over their hives, around the entrance, just swarming over the hives. And I found they're usually pretty vigilant, man, and they have a wider security perimeter as well. So I've been nailed a few times by these guys, not thinking that I was far enough away from them, but nah. Yeah. But there's actually some interesting information for you. I found this in a white paper when I was researching bee venom. White paper research indicates that bee venom actually contains a very potent chemical that inhibits the onset of type 2 diabetes and can to a greater extent reverse the effects of type 2 diabetes. It's one of the fundamental things that are necessary to do that, and it's actually in the bee venom. So if you're a beekeeper, and I asked the beekeeper who owns those bees, I said, do you eat a lot of honey, brother? And he said, bloody oath I do, right? So he may be prone to diabetes, although honey is much better for you if you're a diabetic than any sort of processed sucrose, sugar, or even fructose, fruit sugars. The sugar in honey is dealt with by the system in a better way. Especially if you're diabetic, but even so, if you eat a lot of honey, you run the risk of diabetes, if you're not active enough, etc. But if you're a beekeeper, you're going to get stung by bees all the time, aren't you? So you're actually going to get that chemical into your system on a fairly regular basis, that actually helps to inhibit the onset of type 2 diabetes. Go and research it, man. This is how the Lord created everything. This is what they mean by learning to live with the land, not just on the land. And you can see some of the generational farmers around here, according to their Western mentality, or the wisdom, Caucasian wisdom, have actually learnt to live with the land. They've learnt the flow and the pulse and the rhythm of the land and how to live with it. But there's just stuff everywhere, man, that can help you. Even in something as discomforting as a bee sting, there's actually stuff in there that'll heal another thing that, having too much honey would cause. That's incredible. And it's just in everything. The more you look into things, the more you research stuff, you find that just everything that God has created, right, is there. It has a proper use for us, one way or the other, right? Nothing is just random. Nothing is just there for aesthetics, right? Everything that's aesthetic also has a function and a utility as well. Oftentimes we haven't fathomed that function and that utility because of the narrowness of our minds and our lack of commitment to wisdom and the understanding of the things of God. We want to understand science, but if we would just understand God and His creation and look at it that way, we'd understand science a lot better too. It's all about the perspective, man. But living here can give you a very good perspective. Yeah, it's a completely different perspective. So I mean, everything that I do, so we live here, basically we pay no rent, right? I do 2 days worth of work. When I get work from the guy who owns the property, I agree to work for him for $30 an hour cash. So that means I give him, if I do 2 7.5-hour days, I basically give him $450 worth of work in return for this pad, which is basically from that tree there to that tree, or that fence line, let's say, but between the 2 big trees. And from the road there down to the back. That's our little pad. There's our clotheslines. So I give him $450 a week, but I don't give him any money. I exchange that directly as labour, helping him with stuff on the property and projects that he does there and things that have to be done. Plus, it's not just those 2 days. I also, if I see something that needs doing, I also try to give him another day, a 3rd day at least, or at least a half a day where I do some productive stuff on the property for him as well. Plus, I go around in my own time and get the rocks, and that's part of the work for him as well. I go along, I'm getting quite proficient at fencing, repairing fences and that sort of stuff, so I go along and fix the fence lines, cut up the wood and timber that's over the fence lines, that sort of stuff, repair holes, cut up all the firewood that I need. That's one of my main fuel sources. I want to rely more on firewood than petrol, basically. And with the advent of the AC solar system, that gives me the real potential to do that, because I don't even have to worry about it. For boiling water and stuff, I can either use the kettle, and for larger quantities I would prefer to use the fire, the 20 litre billy that I've got there that's set up in a really good little fire pit that contains the fire very well and heats the water very quickly. It heats the water, that fire pit for the kettle, heats the water as quickly as the gas water heater does that's in the side of the van there. So it takes about 15 minutes for that to heat a tank of water for you. It takes about 15 minutes if you set your fire properly for that to heat up that 20 litres of water in that kettle. So yeah, we don't pay rent as such. I'd directly exchange, say, 2 to 3 days worth of labour for that. He's getting a good deal there, man. I mean, $450 a week for a block of dirt. I mean, if he was paying someone for 2 days a week every week to come and help him, man, that'd soon put a hole in his pocket, right? He'd be pissing and moaning about that. So, yeah. And in return, I get this beautiful place, right? And we can put our shed up here. And we can live here. This is a safe place at the moment. People who want to join us, who want to come and visit or want to spend a bit of time here just to chill out even, are more than welcome. As you can see, Kath's van's still here. She spent quite a bit of time with us. With Susie too when she was still with Cara. And it helped her, I do believe it helped her, just being able to be here with us and just being able to deprogram and detune, debrief, I think is the word for it, but also to deprogram and to unwind. There's a recovery period. Anyone who's spent any amount of time on that front line fighting against this government and the wickedness and the lies and deception and the murderous intent of the people who are running this country. Anyone who's spent any real time standing up against that on the front lines, not just behind your keyboard, but out there doing it tough. And it is tough, mate. Anyone who's done that needs a recovery period because you are all experiencing some level of battle fatigue at the moment, whether you want to call it that or not. I wouldn't say necessarily PTSD, but it's battle fatigue, man. And you need to be able to come down from that and recover and stabilise again. And this is a good place to do it. This is a good place to do it. So anyone, that of our friends who want to join us here or spend a bit of time, don't feel like you would be intruding. You're more than welcome as far as I'm concerned. If you're not here, if you want to stay here permanently, maybe you can speak to the owner and cut a deal with him. There's other pads like this. There's 2 more at least, one just over the rise that way and one near the gate that leads into this area. And he also, that hillock over the clearing just directly over from us there to the west that you can see on the other side of the valley, or the little gully here. Well, that valley leads down into the gully and comes back up onto that rise, that hillock that you can see runs along there, and then it drops back down into the tree line that you can't see. We've walked all over this, all over the property, man. We've even walked up through there a couple of times. That's pretty rough going. It's rougher down through the creek though, where the bloody Death Adders live. Yeah, but that's pretty rough going up through there too, man. And there are tree snakes in there as well, and red-bellied blacks. I've seen plenty of red-bellied blacks down through here, and the tree snake right down near the bottom of the gully, near the front of the property. We found one of them too. But that rise too, he offered us that. In fact, I'm almost kicking myself that I didn't take that, because I reckon I'd have been able to set up with more shade up there. And there's a really cool spot down in those trees where you could clear a pad without having to knock any trees over and set up a house down there too, just off the top of that rise leading down a little bit. It's awesome. I'm almost, almost regret not taking that spot. But defending from fire there is another problem, because it does come in off this boundary over there, just over in that corner. You can see some of the dead trees still where the fire come through before. So there's a very real potential that it'll come right up to you. But the top of that, as you can see, is bald. So if you build on the top of it, not next to any trees, you'd still have a small defendable area. Here's a lot safer for fire. I mean, you've got all this stuff here that would burn through behind us, but we're far enough away from that that if it tried to jump across, we would be able to defend against it. That's a real consideration because these guys get fires through here a bit. I've already seen quite a few fires and, like I said, attended a couple of them as well since I've been here in the last 6 months. I think it's it's not even that long. 4 or 5 months, something like that. Anyway, yeah. So I just wanted to share that our setup with you. And our power system, which is a real blessing. So like I said, we don't pay any rent, we don't pay for water, and we don't pay for electricity. The next thing we need to do is set up a good food supply. Here they are, beautiful girls. I know it's yucky and hot outside though. You guys are better off in here. It's beautiful in here. Woohoo! What have we got? 26 to 25, coming down to 25 degrees. There you go. That's a blessing. So that's just running off that one battery through the inverter, the AC side of it. And I split the system in two. The reason why I split the system in two was because the first generation LifePo 4 batteries apparently have a programming fault. That's why they now have second generation LifePo 4 batteries, which are more expensive again. But they both, the first generation ones, which both of those batteries are, they're about $1,100, those batteries, still. But I guess as the second generation ones kick off, you should be able to get them a lot cheaper shortly. And you can see it's one battery, man, and I can run all these appliances and have my our second fridge. Which is that. Runs off its AC adapter, so it's running off the AC power system all day and all night. This fridge here is gas, running off gas, so it makes sense to do that too. Split your systems, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? Because if one system fails, you've still got a backup. And it'd be cool to have another one of those as a backup too, man, but I don't have the cash at the moment. Because they can either be a fridge or a freezer. They go down to -20, so you can actually use them as a freezer, and they work really effectively. I brought a whole heap of frozen food, meat up with me when I came back just before my court hearing. I had to come back to help Susie. It's not like I had to. I could have stayed there. She told me to stay, but she was in chronic pain again, and I'd already fixed her once just before I left. I fixed her. The Lord helped me fix her again. And she was, being bedridden 2 months again, like with her sciatica that she had, which was why I originally made those vibrational oils that I used. And some of the people actually tried some of those oils on their aches and pains and found that they worked pretty well. I originally made that, figured out how to do that to help Susie when she was crippled with sciatica while we were still in Canberra. She, once again, about a month and a half, man, she was just bedridden. And I ended up being able to help her again, get her up. Massage, therapy, using the vibrational oils. Did the same thing for her again with her shoulder and her neck and her arm, which was completely seized up, and she was in chronic pain. Apparently she has 2 pinched nerves in her neck, according to the MRI that she just had, regarding her condition. which she was booked in for before she was actually, I think she was actually well. The doctor told her he wanted to have it done. There's chronic arthritis apparently in her neck, and 2 pinched nerves now. But by the grace of God and by his wisdom and his mercy toward us, I was able to free her up again. I had to work on her for about a month and a half after I came back. That's why I didn't go to that court trial. Anyone who's contacted me knows that, because I told you. But yeah, and none of the other people around her, the manipulative physio in Tenterfield wasn't much help to her, and she wasn't able to get there because the drive would kill her down to Tenterfield. And the drive to Benalbo to see the therapeutic masseuse there, she was helping her, but she couldn't obviously treat her enough, because you had to work on her every day to help alleviate the problem. That's the thing with holistic treatment. It's not just take a pill, plug yourself into this machine or whatever, and bang, it's done. You allow the body time, and you provide it the right conditions under which it will heal itself. The body's incredible like that, and that's something that the medical profession is keeping from people, that knowledge about their own bodies even. They want you to believe your body's just a piece of shit, and that you need a mechanic, basically, a biomechanic to keep it going, just like a machine. Because it's just a piece of shit. Well, it's not. It's actually fearfully and wonderfully made. And it does have the power and the ability to heal itself, even from pretty bad injuries and pretty bad diseases, if it's given the right conditions to do so. That's all it takes. So between the oil and the massage, obviously provided the right conditions for Susie's body to recover. It just took time and effort. It takes a lot of energy to work those sort of lock-ups out of people. But praise God, we're able to do it. So yeah, our abode. And yeah, we have aircon. What a blessing. The girls get to enjoy it. They're good girls. Little Evie. Little Skeevy Evie. No, she's a beautiful girl. She's a beautiful little girl. No. My Freya. My dear little girl. My little peanut. I had her from when she was like a little peanut. I raised her from the size of a peanut, man. Just about. She was only 7 or 8 weeks old and she looked like a little peanut. No. She turned into a beautiful girl. Oh, she's in heat at the moment, she's in season. And she's actually at the point where she's accepting, so she's just about finished. There's only 3 or 4 days where they'll actually accept out of their whole, 2 or 3 week or longer, sort of, because their hormones start changing about a month before their nunu swells up. Yeah. So it's a month, basically, at least. And toward the end of that, there's a couple of days when they'll receive. And she's at that point now, so I just want to keep her still today. And it's probably not a bad thing because it's pretty bloody hot outside. It's not too bad just walking around, but as soon as you start hooking in and doing something, it cruels you. I was out in the 40-degree heat with a whippersnipper cutting down on grass on Wednesday. That was pretty crueling. And look, yeah, and the whippersnipper ended up dying, man. It couldn't handle it. It was that bloody hot. But yeah, there's something else I wanted to say. There's something else I wanted to say. I just can't remember what now. Oh, beautiful little bumblebee. The bush bee. Yo, we have bush bees here too. In the ironbark. Over on the south boundary there. The big ironbark tree that you could see that I said was part of our boundary. There's a bush bee hive in that. I still got to get, I just got no coin at the moment, but I got to get a little bush bee hive. You can buy them off the internet, obviously. And there's a guy here actually who sells them, makes them and sells them, and he gives you classes on how to raise your bush bees. He lives nearby. I've got to get one at some point and funnel the bush bees into there so that they set up another hive inside there, which they will do. And then I can take them with me. They can be mine. I can split that hive again and set up another one. That's a slow process, but eventually you can build them up. I'd like to do that. There's just so much to do, mate. Because it's not just if I only just had to worry about this, but I've also got to worry about the whole property. I mean, even you got to spend time checking the stock, checking the boundaries, all that sort of stuff. Sometimes you find animals in distress, sometimes you find dead animals. Yeah, so all that's got to be dealt with. So there's just no shortage of shit to do around here, sorry. But yeah, there's no shortage of stuff to do around here. And some of it's my responsibility if I'm actually going to be responsible for the area around here. Some of it I have to keep an eye on as well. Because the owners are not here quite often. Their schedule with the pub means that one of them is always away from here. And Carl, the guy, tends to be away more than Marcy, his wife, so, you know, all those sort of things don't get done. So I've got to do what I can to compensate for that. That's part of my responsibility here. But having said that, I don't wish to be taken advantage of either, so I only give him so much, man. I've worked for enough people, and I've worked for enough different sorts of bosses to, you know, understand that some people, the more you give them, the more they'll just take. And I hate to be like that, but you get tired of being used when you're willing to put out, you know what I mean? Because oftentimes you just give and give and give and you don't get anything back in return. And it then just becomes expected, right, that you will go over and above every time and just keep giving and giving and giving, right, whatever they fucking want. Sorry, I shouldn't be swearing. But, you know, I've worked for guys like that, mate. And it's not an equitable relationship, so I try to keep it equitable. I withhold some of what I could do, or maybe even some of what I should do, and retain some time frame for myself. I mean, even if I just want to sit on my ass, mate, and look out the door and smoke a joint or a cigarette or whatever, right? If it's my time, then, you know, I have every right to that. I have every right to that and to do that. And I've learnt that that's not wrong to think that way either, to actually commit some time just to do whatever you're going to do, man, for yourself, right? Despite work, despite all the other stuff. Because if you don't do that, you end up trapped, man. You trap, and your mentality changes, and your mindset changes, and you end up trapped in your own mind too. and it's not right. I still guess I have to find an equilibrium and a balance between throttling back and pushing forward and putting it into gear. I'm probably a bit slow on that side of things at the moment. Putting it into gear. But I just chip away at stuff. Because there's not much stuff that I can finish in a day either. Like, either I don't have all of the gear that I need, or I don't have the machinery that I need, or whatever, or it's just the time that's necessary. Some things are just projects, man. They just, over a period of time is the only way you're going to get them done. Unless you do that thing to the exclusion of everything else. But even then, most of those sort of things you can't get done in a day, or even 2 days, or a week even. So at that point, you just revolve it through all the things that you got to do and chip away, take a little chip out of everything as you go down, as you go around and around the list of things that you have to do every day, or that you should be doing. Oftentimes you don't get to everything, but if you do something, it's better than doing nothing. So I do that at least. I try and do something that needs doing every day. But yeah, I know I could be quicker. But then I also understand the need for recovery. I mean, I've been trying to recover too. And when you carry emotional burdens with you, other people's emotional burdens, and when they are burdens of sorrow, it does slow you down, mate. It slows you down because it means you've got to push through that sorrow and that burden, that weight that is actually dragging you, trying to drag you back. And it's not, I mean, if you've taken on someone else's burden by your own choice, and the Bible exhorts Christians as brethren to bear one another's burdens. But it does have it does drain some of your energy that you would otherwise use to do other things. And the more of those burdens you either got to get stronger, or you'll just collapse under the weight of it, because it does drain your energy. That's the thing about a burden, man. If you're not strong enough to bear it, eventually you will collapse under the weight of it. That's why it's called a burden. I mean, those are things that have to be done internally. As a Christian, you get help from the Lord. In fact, their only help is from the Lord, Christian or not. If you're going somewhere else for help, man, you're going to the wrong place. And that help won't really help you in the end. Yeah. So there you go. So, I mean, we don't make much money, but we don't spend a lot of money either. That's the other thing. And that's the other thing. So that's a trade-off. I mean, we have a level of independence and anonymity here that most people don't have, except for this phone, basically. Eventually, I guess that'll go too, one way or the other. But we have a level of independence too that most people don't have. But the trade-off for that, and this is how they've trapped society, this is how they've trapped people in society, the trade-off for independence is convenience. That was the trade-off they give us. You give up your independence and we'll give you convenience. And labour-saving devices instead, and toys. But basically it's a trade-off of convenience for independence. Because the more independent you are from the system, and the more you have to rely on yourself. So basically my life now is taken up with the chores of even just maintaining our setup here, right? The daily maintenance so the place doesn't fall apart, so the place doesn't turn to shit, so it's clean and it's habitable. And there's running water, right? So we've got good town pressure water here. No worries with that. You've got running water, you've got AC power, you've got a roof over your head, you've got food storage, We've still got all our gadget, or some of our gadgets. I can play my guitar, I can run computers, charge up the devices, all that sort of stuff. We get good internet reception here actually, which is a bit of a bummer. You go down, but we're up fairly high, and it creates a better line to the tower that's in Tabulum, I believe, is the one that we're bouncing off. You just drop down into the gully there and you soon lose reception. So that's the trade-off, and that's why I guess most people are not doing what we're doing at this point, because this is probably the time to do it. I mean, I was probably 2 years ahead of myself, but it's taken this long even to get this far. And people who are just forced into this situation and who don't have any money, man, they are really going to get cruel. And even if you got money, you suddenly have to figure out what you're going to do, where you're going to live, how you're going to live, right? And if you don't want to be part of the system anymore, how are you going to make money? How are you going to feed your family? All that sort of stuff. And if you can't be part of the system anymore, if you're bankrupt or you've got no money left because your mortgage and all of your commitments are drained, all of your income, you're going to have to figure out how you're going to live, man. There'll be people who will just turn to vagabondism and robbery and thievery and murder to get what they need. So, I mean, this is what it takes, and I guess but because of the trade-off, who wants to do chores all day? I mean, you can't even get your kids to do chores anymore. Most people struggle to get their children these days to do chores, to help with the running of the family home, right? And this is going back to that. So everything that happens here, basically I have to make it happen. Or whoever's responsibility it is to do the chores, man, and to keep all the systems running and maintained, that has to be done. And that's the trade-off for independence. But it's honest. It's an honest way to live, right? It's honest. Because you live or die by the sweat of your own brow in the end. That's hard, but it's honest. And if you've got a few people around you, if you've got a bit of a network that you can trade with and that you can help each other, makes it a lot easier too. I mean, anyone who is interested in that side of it, come and see us. Come and be part of us. Because really, the cities are going to be traps, man. The cities are going to be death traps. And they're going to be the places, obviously, that it's easiest for the AI systems to control the people there and the situations there. So yeah, pay the price, people, because otherwise you'll pay an even greater price. I mean, a trade-off of independence for convenience is a better price to pay than sustainability for bondage. So you want to sustain the status quo in your lives. The trade-off for that, if you stay in the system, will be absolute enslavement and bondage. You're already in bondage, man. It takes a lot to break free from the system. And it'll cost you, man. It'll cost you a lot. It's cost me a lot. It's cost Susie a lot. It's cost anyone who's tried to do it a lot. But that's the price of freedom.